Hello guys, happy Tuesday again. So in today's video I'm going to be talking through my career story, and I asked you guys if this is something that you might be interested in, and a couple of you said yes, so of course I thought I would do a video on it. So I'm going to really be talking through my whole career journey. So how did I get into HR, but also the struggles of getting a graduate job, because I am not going to lie to you, it was a struggle. So if you're currently looking for a job or you're just interested in knowing about my career story, then make sure you keep watching. But first, if you are new to my channel, hello, my name is Verenya and I talk about things to do with money, your career, and having a positive mindset for success as well. So if that does sound great to you, then you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification below so you don't miss out on any new videos. So let's take it back all the way to school times. So I actually wanted to become a dance coach. So I used to dance, if you didn't know, but if you may have seen my Instagram, I do have some photos of me dancing in my competitions and stuff. But yeah, that was my main focus, and I realized that it could be a bit difficult to get into that industry. So I realized that I had to change that career choice and look for something else. So I decided that actually maybe going into sports science was a better route. So when I went to university, I actually studied sports science with management, and actually my mum really helped me with that because I just wanted to study sports science, but she said if I do management then it kind of diversifies my degree, and it just means that in case nothing ever happens with the sports science part, I at least have the management part, so I can sort of venture into other things. So I'm actually really grateful that she helped me with that, because during the time that I was at university, I basically realized that sports science wasn't for me. So I went to a university that was basically one of the top universities for sports science, because that is what I wanted to do. I was really passionate about sports. I loved sports in school, and also I was a dancer as well. So yeah, it kind of made sense. Although I know some people try to say that dancing is not a sport, it is a sport, and I'm going to tell you now, dancing is a sport. But anyway, yes, I went into university and basically went into first year, and I realized that I did not like the sports science at all. It was very theory based and it just wasn't for me. I actually really enjoyed the management part more often. So when it came to things like management, I was learning things like accounting, marketing, and psychology. So when it came to second year, I decided that I was going to do more modules in the management part rather than the sports science part, and that was also the same in final year at university as well. So when it came to my final year, I just realized that sports science, or even just the sports industry, just really wasn't for me. I realized that I really liked sports as a hobby rather than actually, you know, like a career. So I decided that I wasn't going to go into that route, and I needed to figure out what I wanted to go into instead. And I had basically done like part-time jobs, you know, like when you work in retail, I was like a sales assistant and I'd been like a retail assistant. I used to do like a part-time job at a phone company, and I did really well in terms of sales. So I thought, okay, maybe that's something that I want to go into. So in final year, you start thinking about graduate schemes, and I really wanted to go into a graduate scheme because I thought that's what I needed to do to become successful and, you know, go up the career ladder and all of that stuff. So I then started applying for graduate schemes, and that's where really the struggle came in. So I had been applying for graduate schemes in like marketing, sales, business management, because that's really what I thought I wanted to go into. I just really wasn't sure, so I just thought I'll just apply for all of them. And yeah, I definitely struggled. I managed to get the test. So, you know, when you've got like psychometric tests that you have to do, I managed to pass them. I had even bought like a course to help me practice for those psychometric tests, because I knew that if I didn't do that, then I probably would just fail all of them. So when it came to things like numerical and all of that like verbal reasoning stuff, I actually bought a course. It did really help me out because it meant that I was able to pass all of these tests, which was good. So I would usually get through to the application stage, and then it would get to the assessment center. Now, I don't think I necessarily struggled much. I sometimes struggled with the group exercise. The reason being just because it takes me a little while for me to process information. So I'm not the type of person to just start talking as soon as, you know, the assessment exercise starts. I like to process the information, and then when I talk, I will say something that's valuable information. So that's really the only part I'd say I would kind of struggled with, and I actually struggle with that now in terms of like when we're always working in teams. So that's just a weakness I have. It's just what I'm always like. But usually when it came to things like the assessment center, I would do pretty well. Even with interviews, I was quite good at interviews, but I was getting rejected all the time. And basically every single time I would get feedback, people would say, oh, you know, you were really good at the assessment center. Honestly, you were really, really great. and you were close and all of this stuff, but we just didn't think you were right for our company. Now, I don't really know what that means. Maybe it was my personality, I don't know, but every single time they just thought I just wasn't right for the company. And that was basically for the majority of graduate schemes that I had applied to. So yeah, during that final year, I had been applying and going for interviews and getting rejected. Within that final year as well, I was also competing in dance, but I had also become a dance coach as well. I partly did that not only because I love dance, but also because I thought it would look good on my CV, because I thought I'd be able to show, you know, some leadership skills and some team working skills and all of that. And then also at the same time, I was actually working part-time. So I had managed to get a part-time role at the university careers department. And really the main reason actually why I went for that kind of job was because I thought that would really help to boost my CV. But despite that, I still struggled to get graduate schemes and I still kept getting rejected basically. The only thing is that when you're applying to graduate schemes during university, it's not that bad because you're still at uni. I really started to feel it when we had graduated from university, particularly when it came to things like September time, because obviously during the summer it was okay because everyone was on summer and like I was enjoying life. I was going on holidays, spending money that I didn't have, so I wasn't really too bothered. I had been applying for other places, but it just wasn't really getting anywhere. And I had then got to the point where I was thinking, okay, maybe sales isn't for me because clearly I had been rejected. So one of my friends actually asked me, you know, and said, oh, have you considered a career in HR? Because obviously you used to work in a careers department. And I was like, oh no, not really. And then I started doing research. I looked at things like target jobs, which was quite good. And I just looked online about, you know, what it's like to work in HR, what do you do? And I realized that it was actually quite a good career path for me because number one, it was quite similar to some of the management modules I had been doing, and also because it's dealing with people, and for me I was quite passionate with that, and that's probably why I did quite well in sales, because really it was that people element that I really enjoyed. So I then thought, okay, great, I'm gonna go into HR. So then I started applying for HR roles thinking, oh yeah, no, this is great. And every single time I would apply for HR roles, because obviously it was too late to start applying for graduate schemes, so I was really trying to look for entry-level roles. They kept saying you need experience, or you know, you need at least 6 months worth of experience. And I was thinking, well, I kind of have experience working in the careers department, but it's not really HR experience. So, you know, it was quite hard, and obviously it meant that I was getting rejected. So it then got to about September time, and this was probably the time I was getting a bit worried because most of my friends had already found graduate jobs. You know, if they hadn't got a graduate scheme earlier, they had found an entry-level role, and I still was unemployed. I hadn't found a graduate job, and that's where it started to get a bit tough. And obviously I was still getting rejected. Then I got to the point where I had put my CV online, and I had some recruiters, so recruitment agencies, contacting me and asking me if I had thought about applying for a job in recruitment. So this would be like a recruitment agency. Basically, you have vacancies that come into you and you're trying to find candidates to match to that vacancy. I hadn't really thought of it, but then I kind of had the idea that maybe that would give me a kind of link into HR, into the HR world. So I decided that I was going to go for it. So basically at that point I had a recruiter who was going to help me apply for recruitment roles. And the one thing I would say with recruitment, it was more so about sales. But even when I was trying to get a recruitment job, I was even struggling. I mean, some companies, I went to assessment centers and I got rejected. There was one recruitment agency where I thought I was doing really, really well. And you know, I'd met the director and I'd met all of their workers. It was basically between me and another person. They chose the other person because the other person had more experience apparently. So again, I was unsuccessful and then still unemployed. I remember at that point randomly I had a breakdown. Yeah, I started crying to my mum actually. She was shocked because it just came out of nowhere and I was screaming and I was crying, and it was actually quite tough to be honest, because you work so hard at university, and you know, I had done things where I thought, you know, the fact that I'd got a part-time job and the fact that I had become a dance coach and I had done all those things at university and not just doing my degree, if that makes sense. And yeah, the fact that I'd worked so hard and I just wasn't getting any job, and like you see all your friends getting all these jobs as well, and yeah, it was tough, man. It was tough. And obviously I was lucky because I'd moved back home, so I didn't really have to worry about paying bills and stuff. But one thing I would say is, guys, if you're getting rejected, mental health is important, and make sure you are looking after yourself, because I didn't even realize it. I didn't realize it until that day where I'd started screaming and obviously realized how much that had got to me basically. But anywho, there was another interview that I went to, the same recruiter. I think he was just determined to get me something. And this same recruiter basically helped me have another interview with another company, and I think the manager really liked me, and essentially I got the job, which was great. It was amazing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I finally have a job. Now with recruitment, I would say that it's definitely long hours. So my standard hours were 8 to 6, but sometimes you'd see me in the office by 7:30, and sometimes I wouldn't leave till 7 or 7:30 because there was just so much to do. And because it's recruitment, it's very sort of fast paced, high volume. There's just so much you're trying to do, and also you're trying to talk to candidates maybe before work or during lunchtime or after work, so that's why it tends to be long hours. So it's not for the faint-hearted. That's why I think they try to get graduates in, because graduates have all this energy and they're ready to compete, and you know, they've got all this motivation. So yeah, but that's why they have quite a high turnover as well, because you'll see that a lot of people do end up leaving recruitment just because you can get burnt out quite easily. But anyway, I think about 5 months later, yeah, we all got made redundant. Their headquarters wasn't in London, so where I was working was in London. Their headquarters was actually based outside London, but they had a London office, and they basically decided that they weren't going to renew the lease in the London office. So essentially it meant that we were all going to be made redundant. So yeah, 5 months later I had been made redundant. It was the first time I'd been made redundant. And you know, like when you're trying to get that 6-month experience mark as well, because every time on job descriptions I would always see, you know, must have 6 months of experience. So the fact that I couldn't even reach that 6 months, guys. But anyway, you accept it, and to be honest, because it wasn't just me being made redundant, it was our whole team, it didn't really feel that bad. And obviously they'd given me a redundancy payout as well for I think an extra month or 2, so I was hoping that that would help tide me over until I find another job. But yeah, basically I tried to apply for HR jobs then, because I thought, you know, I've got some 5 months worth of experience. I was still getting rejected, and it had then got to a point where I just thought, you know what, I just need to try and get another recruitment job. So actually I don't think I even replied for many. I think like a lot of recruitment companies came to me just because I had recruitment agency experience now, and like when they see that, they then start calling you up saying, oh, do you want to come and work at recruitment? And I had one interview, they were in London, and their hours were a bit easier. Their hours were about 8:30 to 6, which obviously is still a little bit long compared to like your standard 9 to 5, but it gave me an extra half an hour, so I thought, you know what, that's fine. So yeah, I interviewed with this company and they were quite cool. I mean, like their team was quite young, and you know, I thought it was probably going to be quite a fun place to work. On the interview day, that's when they actually offered me a job. Now this was the one mistake I made, because I then just accepted it on the spot. I should not have done that. I should have interviewed with other people. And the only reason why I say that is because number one, culture is so important. I should have taken the opportunity to maybe message some of the colleagues working there and ask them, you know, what's it like working them, really just getting to know the company before, you know, taking the offer. And then also my salary as well. So the salary they were offering me was basically the same salary that I had previously been on, but I should have tried to negotiate that. I think even if it was just a little bit more, I think I should have tried to negotiate, and I didn't. So that was another major mistake that I made. But anyway, I accepted the job and started working for them, and realized that it actually wasn't a great company to work at, and a lot of people had actually left by the time I started working there, and yeah, it just wasn't great. They also had 1 day's notice, which I just thought was absolutely mad, because that meant that they could literally fire me today and I would just only be paid for the 1 day, and then that's it. But again, vice versa, I could just quit and I would just leave on that day basically, or I would just leave the next day. But yeah, it got to a point where I was like, what am I doing with my life? This isn't something that I want to do full time. I really want to get into HR. So I had already decided that I was going to apply for a master's. I think I had decided after I got made redundant in my first job. So I had been applying for masters. I hadn't heard from them back yet, but it was getting to the point where I was working in this current job and I absolutely hated it. It just wasn't a nice atmosphere. But also at the same time, because I didn't really have a future, I didn't know what was going on with my life, I kind of felt like I had to stay. Then it got to one day where it was just so bad and I just felt like I couldn't work at this place anymore. So I decided that I was actually going to resign, even though I didn't have anything else going on. I just thought, I just can't do this anymore. But then on that day, God came through, and that exact day where I was planning on writing my notice, I had got the offer from a university that I wanted to go to, offering me to do my master's basically. So as soon as I got that email, and it was on that day, I wrote my notice, took my notice into my workplace the next day, and I said, yep, sorry, I'm going. And obviously it was 1 day's notice, so it meant that I could just leave straight after I gave my notice basically. So after I had quit, it was all well and good, but then obviously I realized that I didn't have money, and I think I had quit just early early summertime, so I wasn't starting my master's until the September, so I still had a few months. So I thought, actually I need to try and see if I can find something or some type of temporary work just to tide me over until I start my master's. And that's definitely when God came through again, because one of my friends had also worked with an agency, a recruitment agency, who had been doing like temporary agency work. So if companies want like a temporary person to come in and do some work, then the agency will sort that out. So I basically went to them and they had managed to find me something. It was a temporary job. It was only for 3 weeks, but it was working in the HR department. And that is when I knew, okay, this is my chance. Now, it was only an administration assistant role, so I was only doing admin, but I was going to be doing admin for that HR department. Now, I would say that during those 3 weeks, the way I performed, guys, even though it was just admin, I did everything, and I was curious and I was asking questions and I was asking them, you know, what else can I help with? And I was so enthusiastic because I knew that I wanted to learn all things to do with HR. And I'd even told them I'm going to be doing my master's, and you know, by the time I left that company, or by the time I was getting ready to leave the company, you know, they'd given me like chocolates and flowers, even though I'd only been there for 3 weeks, and they were like, yeah, definitely keep in touch. And yeah, it was really great. And then after that, I still had some time before my master's. God came through again and found me another temporary agency role, and that again was for another company in a different industry. So again, I was an admin assistant but working in a HR department, and again, even though it was admin, I still found it really, really useful. So then came September, I then did my master's, and most of you guys know that I actually did my master's in HR. And then it had got to a point where I decided to start applying for graduate schemes, specifically HR graduate schemes. I again got rejected. Yeah, I got rejected from all of them basically. Again, it was similar feedback. Really loved you at the interview, really loved you at the assessment center, just didn't think you were the right fit. So even though I had a master's in HR and I had a little bit of experience now, I was still getting rejected, unfortunately. But then there was one company that I had gone to a graduate scheme for, and they had actually rejected me, but they said to definitely keep in touch because I could be considered for an entry-level role because I had had some experience. Again, even though I was an admin assistant, I had worked in a HR department, so I kind of understood what HR was about, and also because I had some recruitment experience as well. So fast forward to, I guess, nearly completing my master's. I was still doing my dissertation, but the company had actually come back to me. So the recruiter working at the company had told me a couple of positions. I had then been interviewing with them, and then at the same time, the first temporary job that I had, so that company that I had worked for about 3 weeks being an admin assistant, also advertised a role. And obviously it had been a year, I didn't think they would remember me, but I ended up applying because I thought, do you know what, why not? And they did remember me. I came to an interview. It then turned out that both companies offered me a role. I had gone from being rejected and not getting any offers, nothing, zero, to now having 2 offers. And then God came through again, and this second company, actually, they then called me and said, oh, we want to offer you more. Just randomly, they didn't even know that I had another interview or that I had another offer for another job, and they basically just wanted to offer me more. And yeah, at that point I chose that company. Now, I didn't just choose it because of the salary, I also chose it because of the internal progression, because I knew that I could have a lot more experience. Whereas with the other company, yes, they did have a great culture, but the problem was that for you to move up the ladder, basically, someone would have to leave. And I didn't really want that because I wanted to be able to progress quite quickly, just because it's just something that I really wanted to do. And I knew that I could do that with this other company, so I decided to go with that other company. But yeah, 2 years later, I'm still at that same company. And yeah, of course, I hope that you guys enjoyed my career story. If you did, then please do give me a thumbs up. And of course, if you would like to know more, then feel free to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys on Friday.